Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Abdullah X Ali and I go by Ax, my initials. This episode is a conversation with a friend of mine, Dr. Mehmet, about how we became to be design doctors and what it's like to get a PhD in design. Hopefully you enjoy the content. If you do, consider subscribing. I'm going to be putting some content on design, design thinking, the science of design, and just behind the scenes of things that I make. I'm a scientist and an artist. I'm probably going to show you things like building furniture and designing different applications, whether it's software or hardware. And really, just like I have behind me here on the piece of art that I made, I think that everything is designed. So if you want to come on this journey with me, consider subscribing, like this video if you do enjoy it. Comment, let me know what things you'd like to see. And if you have any questions about following a career in design, I am happy to answer those in the comment section, or reach out to me anywhere on social media, on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or TikTok. Everywhere I am the Ax Ali.
I used to have that in my previous apartment. Now it's like I have a giant window, but it's so far away, and it's all, like
Yeah.
the sun is down, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter
and
now.
it's
Mm.
dark now, so you got like the whole moody setup going on behind
Oh
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, backlight and everything. Hair light, I think they call it.
Yeah. Okay, so today I just wanted to, just talk about what it's like for you and your journey, and I also share my own journey on how like we got into becoming design doctors, and what does that mean? How do you define that? So, um,
Amazing.
yeah, why don't you start?
Yeah, I made some notes.
Okay.
I like being prepared, but the notes are mainly for they are about the design PhD thing, I guess. It's so the story is not in the notes, but I can improvise it, I guess.
Of course, yeah, yeah,
I think I basically always wanted to be a designer since I was like maybe born even, or even like when I started making sense of the world.
yeah,
The interesting thing is that it took many, many years until I found out that there are such things as designers. Like I didn't know that that existed. So when I was like 5, I wanted to be a scientist because I thought that scientists are the people who invent things and make things.
yeah,
Like in Back to the Future, like there's the doctor,
yeah. Doc
was
Brown,
it
yeah,
Brown? Yeah, Doc
yeah,
Brown. He's the one who like makes like the cool looking time machine out of the sports car and everything. So
yeah,
that's what I kind of wanted to be. Then I found out that there are such people as engineers because my cousin was married to a computer engineer.
hmm,
So I found out about that, and I found out about other kinds of engineering, and I was like, yeah, I want to be an engineer then, because that's the people who invent the things and they make the things.
yeah.
And then it
So
was
that's
only when I
interesting.
actually
Yeah. So you said you wanted to become an engineer, but and that was you were where were you growing up at the time?
in Istanbul.
In Istanbul, so in Turkey. So
Yeah.
I was like across the border from you. I was growing up in Baghdad.
Wow.
It's really neat. So in your culture, I know in my culture is like any we all grow up and the top sort of destination, everything that we're aiming for is becoming
Hmm.
a medical doctor.
Or
And
an
then
engineer.
or an engineer. Yes,
We
exactly.
have that saying in Turkey. It's like a really traditional thing where the families always want their daughters to be married to a doctor or an engineer.
Exactly.
And
Or a
I think you and
lawyer.
I
That's
are
like
both. That's
sort of,
nice.
yeah. uh, so was engineer always, regarded or revered as the same caliber as a doctor? So was it always doctor or engineer, or was there like a separation and or a difference when you were growing up?
No, I think I mean like there's these old kind of traditional people, who sort
Yeah.
of have want to have like a proper life for their families, and the
Hmm.
doctor and the engineer are like the two careers that are appreciated in the family.
All right.
That's always the case. I mean, I don't know about your family. My family was not like super traditional.
Yeah, mine neither. Yeah,
But still, it's the whole culture of a whole
exactly.
country, millions of people believing in certain things,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. You're within a society where it's like, your parents, they want the best for you, but then also there's that whole society of like, oh, what would they think? And
Yeah.
because you're like you're willingly not wanting to be a doctor, that's a thing of like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's different lives. Like, I think my parents were certainly aware that being a doctor and being an engineer or being, I don't know, what, accountant or
yeah,
whatever, these are entirely different lifestyles and suited for different kinds of people.
yeah,
So I never had that kind of any kind of like influence, or they never tried to convince me to be anything in particular.
yeah.
But this was just like this creative like urge, this addiction to like
Hmm.
make things and
Yeah.
create, which could be anything. Like I did music for a while. I had a band that we released an album with. That has always been
Okay.
in
What
like
what's the
inside of
band,
me.
and can we find you on Spotify,
Yeah, sure. It's called Mr. Mina, and
Mister?
we released like one record
Wow.
from like uh, uh, at least 5 years ago. This was when I was a grad student.
What did you play? Did you sing?
I played the bass guitar.
Okay.
Yeah, but I play a lot of things. I play the
Nice.
guitar, the drums. I just get together with friends and then
Yeah.
whatever instrument no one else is playing, I just pick it up.
Wow.
Or I used to. I don't do it so much anymore.
I'm so envious because I'm like very rhythmically challenged. Like at
Oh,
home,
really?
my wife has she has a guitar, and then for her latest birthday when we moved to New York, I got her a piano. Um, and she plays both a little bit. She's trying to learn the guitar, but I like
Wow.
cannot. Yeah, I think it's just like it's like a practice thing. I don't have the
That's
patience to
so
practice something.
interesting. I thought everyone from the Middle East was supposed to be like rhythmically adept, like
Yeah,
polyrhythms and all
I
that,
can
but
kind of hold my own dance wise, but like just playing something, it's just like it doesn't sound the same as in my head. So I just like quit
ah,
on it. I guess I just need to be like more patient.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
back to
like
your
part of my story, but how about
yeah.
yours?
Yeah, I sort of like you grew up like fascinated by making things. So like I always was a very artistic kid. And like in art class I like was always, my artwork was shown off, not for being the most technical but for being the most creative. So, and by that I
Interesting.
mean like taking an idea and approaching it in a different way. And that's, I think, what creativity is. It's like, taking a different perspective, putting your own spin on things. There are not a lot of things that are like, brand new, because even in art class, we were all, you know, we had an assignment, we we're all supposed to draw the same thing. But I always try
Hmm.
to find that, what is my own unique flavor of this thing? How do I make it my own?
Wow.
And yeah, and I've always like was fascinated with the process of creation, of like I have this mental image of something, and how do I make it into a reality to translate it to others. So we have family in Syria, so I'm half Iraqi, half Syrian, and they had
Okay.
before everything that happened, unfortunately, they had clothing factories, and they had like contracts with Disney and Adidas and Everlast and whatever to like manufacture clothes for them. And I
Wow.
remember like when I was 6 years old, I was like on the kitchen table, where Middle Eastern families, we love sitting in the kitchen, and we had a giant kitchen table, and I used to like wake up early in the morning, grab a whole bunch of like scrap paper and my big bag of colors, and I would just like design t-shirts and design clothes.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and like also like when I
Did you get
was
any of them produced?
I don't think so. I mean, they took it and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna get that made," but it was just like a little bit out of there, a little bit out there, because like I would just, again, just like putting my own spin on it. I would just like make T-shirts that are like had like different length of sleeve and whatever, and they were like not
Hmm.
really standard. They were more like custom pieces, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this looks amazing. We'll get it done, whatever." And they're like, "No, we just make like the same T-shirt. We just print different things on it." Um,
Wow.
yeah. Also, we were like expanding our house when I was like in the fifth grade, and we were talking about like what kind of expansion do we want to make to the second floor. And I remember I basically drew the floor plan. I was looking at our original floor plans and like looking at it and learning how things are drawn. Like what does it mean to have a window here? How do you represent that? How do you represent a wall? How
Wow.
do you represent
How old are
a
you then?
door? I was say fifth grade was at 10 years old or something like that.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah. And I like drew up the expansion plans that the architect actually like took and then just like implemented those. So I've always been fascinated with that. But like I said, I was
That's
like
so cool.
grew up in a family where like medicine was a big thing. Like so my uncle is doctor and a dentist. My grandfather, who was like the sort of like the matriarch of the entire family,
Ooh.
he was like we all grew up in his house. He had a big business of like selling medical supplies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so he was like basically like the big role model for all of us. So we all wanted to follow in his footsteps. Until I like moved to the States, where I started college. I started in community college actually, and I was doing pre med, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to, and I was, as I was like learning more about how to get into the medical system here in the States, and it's you do 4 years of pre med or whatever college degree you want, and then you go to med school and spend
Oh yeah.
years there. So they're like, I was talking to my counselor, and they were like, you gotta declare a major, whatever it is. So I thought I was being smart, and I was like, okay, I don't want to be in debt when I go to med school because like that's a big thing. I don't have wealth or anything um, to put myself through med school. So I really love computers, so I'm gonna major in computer science. So I work as a programmer at night while during the day
Wow.
going to med school. And that was a
Oh
horrible
wow. That is so smart.
no, it was not. It was a horrible idea because like the workload was so hard, like doing like data structures and heavy calculus, and also trying to
Oh
do
yeah.
organic chem in the same semester. I like ended up you know crashing and burning. So
Wow.
I transitioned into information systems, and that's really when I started to take design more seriously. I had the idea of being a designer, like sort of as an abstract, but I didn't really have a definition for it.
Hmm.
So when I found a major where I can think about technology from the perspective of the people, because that was a thing that I didn't really enjoy being a computer scientist. It was all about
Mm-hmm.
making the code run. It wasn't about, what do we do with technology? So when I found a major that introduced that personal aspect to it, that's when it sort of clicked for me. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. So
When I found out about it, I think I was in high school.
yeah,
But it wasn't in school that I found out about like the concept of, being a designer and doing
yeah,
design and everything. I think it was when my parents bought the new apartment and we're moving, okay? So, we have stuff from the old apartment and some stuff is coming in and we're also buying some new stuff because this is the first time they have bought an apartment. They were living in rentals before, so the stuff was
yeah,
maybe like a little less sort of considered or uh, uh, cared for, and now they're like buying new stuff and we're going to like furniture stores and looking at stuff, and I'm just realizing because I'm very young, like I don't know like the sort of some things are status symbols or whatever. I have no idea,
yeah,
right? So I'm just like observing that some objects are just receiving more care,
yeah,
like more consideration. Some of them are obviously more expensive. Some of them are like fancy looking, just because you can tell by the way that something looks that it's sort of well made and everything.
yeah.
And I asked my mom, like, what is this? Like, why is this, more important than the other thing? And she was like, that is design. And I'm like, oh shit. Wow, that's what I want to do. Because like it's kind of like about care for me. Like design is always about putting care into things, whatever it is that you're making. It could be
Yeah.
software, could be a piece of furniture. But that's the care factor. That's what makes a difference for me. And that's what I kind of wanted to have in my work, in my general life as well, I guess, from that point onwards.
Right. Um, so so how would you now define design? Like if you were to like put on a definition for it, and how does that
Mm,
relate to sort of like your journey to like going into and getting the PhD?
yeah, I'm realizing now that there are a lot of different kind of branches of design, and they all have their own traditions and their own language and their own definitely even like activities of like some kinds of designers work with their hands a lot and they
Yep.
draw and they sketch and they do things. But when I design, for example, I work with code. Like I call myself a designer because I produce designs, but when I produce designs, it's more often using either, like front end design on a website or something like that, or it's some kind of document design where I'm working with a complicated software to make it happen.
Yeah.
It could be like InDesign or Figma or whatever, but it's kind of like editorial document design, or I do interaction design projects where things are moving around and there's sensors and actuators. So the code, the actual behavior of the system, of the mechanism is kind of your design material, and you have to work with the code to make that happen and see, and then you change it and you go back and forth and so on. So to me, it's kind of defined in a way by a particular way of doing things, a particular process, not necessarily whatever like tactical skill you're doing hands-on at the time, but to me, it's about iteration. It's
Hmm.
always about like, making something more than once and doing it over and over and over, and each time sort of making small improvements. That to me is design. Another thing is that materializing things, making things physical or visual, somehow um, using physical, tangible, or visual deliverables in some way, objects, artifacts, to make progress in a creative process, in the process of creating a product or something, somehow taking steps forward towards that realization of that thing by making physical stuff iteratively. And you can adapt that to like whatever kind of design we're talking about. I think it kind of applies. It applies to fashion, it applies to architecture, it applies to graphics or software. That's how I think about it now after sort of having like seriously studied it for like 10 years. That's
Yeah.
that's what I kind of arrived at.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that somewhere there's a very, very like proficient, amazing designer that is working in a way that has absolutely nothing to do with what I just talked about.
Yeah.
I'm sure that that exists.
Yeah. No, I'm with you 100% on that point because for me, I think that everything is designed. Anything that is not naturally occurring without the intervention of human beings. Uh, I think everything encompassing that in the material world is designed, and also like things that don't materialize. So like, and that's where we go into the sort of the area of service design. So
Mm,
a series of steps that everybody agrees on as shared knowledge, even though it's never written anywhere, but we all know it, whether it was made by one person or by a collective of people. That's design. So to me, again, like you, after years of sort of contemplating what it means, and when I was doing my PhD, I one day just wrote it down and I said that design is the intelligence behind creation. And
mm,
this definition has always sort of, anytime I sort of held it up to test, it's stuck. It's stuck for me, and I feel like it's the one that I'm most comfortable with. Um, so that's how I define design. But before I started my PhD, design to me was, I had this abstract idea of it. That we're talking about the early 2010s. So Steve Jobs, Apple, and Johnny Ive
mm,
were really, really, on the scene. They're very everything's becoming very popular with the iPhone
Yeah.
and Apple products, the introduction of the iPad, and just like watching those keynotes and then seeing
Yeah.
those, highly produced videos of like Johnny Ive sitting with the white background and everything, and it's like chief design officer, and like just looking at him, and I was like, yeah, this guy's job is to basically make these things a reality and like make sure there are like a lot of details and a lot of decisions all lead up to this thing. And I didn't know that was experience design, or what an experience is. um
Have you heard of Mark Newson?
yes. Yeah.
He's like, I think he's Johnny Ive's business partner now. They
They
have a
are,
studio
yeah.
together, and this guy is like one of the most impressive designers in the world, by the way.
Hmm.
Like Johnny Ive, we know the Apple stuff, and
Yeah.
it's impressive and everything, but he doesn't like speak so much out there about his process.
Yeah.
Mark Newson actually has produced a documentary with some people,
Oh,
and this was
really?
like, I think late 90s or early 2000. There's a documentary, it's a BBC documentary
Uh-huh.
about Mark Newson, and it's like a docu-series. It's a bunch of like 5 or 10 episodes following this guy around as he goes about like does his projects and meets with suppliers and
Wow.
goes to like exhibitions where they're sort of showing off his stuff and everything. There's a huge like whole documentary about it, and that was one of the most inspiring things that I've seen professionally when I
Yeah.
was like, just starting out. I think I was in university or maybe like late high school when I watched this thing, and
Yeah.
I just thought like, wow, that is a good life to live. This is a good thing to be doing every day. He's doing at the time he was doing like really amazing projects, which were like kind of artsy and doing like weird manufacturing things on different objects. I don't know if all of his designs have aged well. Some
Yeah.
some probably have. I'd have to like go back and review it. But his process was like so cool, man. Traveling all the time, going to like he went to the marble quarry in like somewhere deep in Italy where
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci or someone like used to get his marble to make sculptures. It's the same like marble yard
The
in a
blocks.
mountain where there's still, yeah, the
Yeah.
blocks, and they take those blocks out and they're making like furniture out of them, like dinner tables and out of marble. I mean
Yeah.
that it's from an engineering standpoint, the process is like massively impressive. Like without breaking a
Hmm.
massive piece of marble, you're making like a completely monolithic dinner table out of it with like water jet cutters and everything. It was just
Yeah.
magnificent stuff.
The subtractive manufacturing process, where you
Yeah,
start
yeah,
with a piece of raw material, whether it's marble or wood or
yeah. You
aluminum. That
chop it
was
up.
or aluminium, as
Yeah,
the Brits would say. That was
yeah.
also like one of the fascinating things, again, with Apple and their influence on me. Is I watched that video when they introduced the unibody MacBook Pro, and they showed like this sheet
Hmm.
of aluminum that was being engraved with the water jets.
Wow.
And then just they engrave it so tight to the surface, where you look at it and you don't see anything, but there is an
Hmm.
LED behind it. So the LED only shows up when it's an indicator for the battery. And that to me was just
Oh
like
yeah.
now I'm just like nerding out as a designer of like, it's something that is not there. It's not taking up space. It's not grabbing your attention. But when you need it to indicate something, then it pops up. And so when I started, studying design principles, Gestalt principles, and whatever, and all those things, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. There's like a whole, everything serves a purpose, and that's
Interesting. Was
when
that at
I
the university, like your undergrad when you were studying those things?
yeah, so I started studying sort of like proper design principles in my intro to HCI class, and that was taught by
Hmm.
Dr. Amy Hurst at the University of Maryland, about Baltimore County at that point, and I had no idea what it was. I was
Hmm.
like in my senior year doing information systems, and I thought, I'm gonna uh, I want to like go out in the world, start building apps and things like that. Start
Where was
designing
this? Can you
Baltimore,
remind me which in Baltimore? Okay.
Baltimore in Maryland in the States. Um,
Wow.
so I had like zero intention of going to grad school. I thought, you had to like get really, really high marks to get into grad school. And I had already, crashed out of pre-med and computer science. So like my GPA was not the best. Like I barely had like above 3.0, like barely. So I was like, grad school is not an option for me. And then I took this class, and in the first in our first class, Dr. Hurst, Amy was like, "So why are you taking this class? Write down your answer." And the class is human computer interaction. And I was like, I don't know what to write here, so I wrote, I want to build an Iron Man suit. And then
Oh
years
wow.
after, Amy came to me and she was like, I was cleaning my office and guess what I found? And like she showed me the paper what I wrote. I was like, oh my God, I was so wrong about this.
Oh
I was
wow.
like, people, computers, Iron Man suit.
Wow. I had
Um,
like at the time, when I was studying at the university until I like got to grad school,
yeah,
which happened after I graduated.
yeah.
I was more or less like hardcore into like engineering. I was into
Mhm,
software. I
yeah,
was coding all the time for different projects, even like freelancing as a web
wow,
developer and everything.
yeah.
And I was very much into like not only software but also like mechanical engineering because that's what I
Yeah.
was studying since
Oh,
I was like a manufacturing nerd.
yeah.
Um,
So that was your
it,
undergrad? It was in
yeah,
mechanical
yeah.
engineering? Okay.
Yeah, that and economics. That
Wow.
was a lot of fun. Because
Yeah.
at some point I realized, like, I mean, it's kind of that's why I asked like where you did your schooling because it's
Yeah.
very like geographically dependent. Kind of like
Hmm.
in Turkey there are certain sets of jobs available for engineers, for computer scientists, for industrial designers, and so on. Incidentally, engineering, especially like mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, has some of the broadest optionality available to you when you graduate. Like you can take up a lot of different kinds of jobs. Banks will hire you. Um, Consulting companies will hire you. You
Yeah.
can obviously go and do engineering. But while I was studying, I thought I just went in there believing that I would be like a engineer, making machines and things. And
Hmm.
then at some point, I did internships at factories,
Okay. So
and I
did
just
you do your
realized,
internships during undergrad?
yeah, yeah. So like the first and the second year, I think, and I did like a bunch of internships where people were actually manufacturing things, like
Uh-huh.
household appliances factory and car parts factory and things like that. And
Yeah.
I
Wow.
remember when I actually did it, I was not as excited about the actual, experience of being there compared to what I was sort of expecting. So I realized at that point I'm gonna have to investigate other sorts of activities for my professional life.
So
So
what
that's why I
didn't you
picked up
like about it?
economics. It's just like the physical environment of being in a manufacturing facility every
Oh,
day. Like
yeah.
I still, I mean, I love the stuff. I still like go to these places whenever I can, or like prototyping labs and stuff. I have a lot of fun in those places, and I really respect people who sort of commit to that kind of like craft or that kind of business. It's a very solid kind of thing to do with your life. It's just that for me personally, I wanted to be in other kinds of places and environments. So I took up like business and economics to study because I thought maybe that's a place where I might be interested in. I
Yeah.
then actually did internships at banks and I found that that was less preferable even to
So
factories. It was
yeah,
so boring, man.
the financial system not
Yeah.
any better. So what was the this is gonna be like really different, I think. What was
Mm.
the experience of like going after and getting those internships while you were doing your undergrad? Was that, through applications or personal connections?
It was a combination of both. One of them was an application. One of them was like it was a company that my dad's friend basically owned.
Hmm. Yep.
But they were doing like serious manufacturing. They were a factory, and I went there and did like CAD models and
Wow.
even just learning about all of the
Yeah.
machines. That takes like 2 weeks. It's basically a whole factory.
Hmm.
Um, the uh, the bank was also again through an acquaintance. I think it was through my cousin who
Yeah.
was in that industry at the time.
Hmm.
And I find that usually, like, people listening to this most probably are sort of younger people. That's what I'm expecting, who are looking into these kinds of careers, considering maybe like a PhD in design, human computer interaction, whatever. I can say to them 100% that personal connections are the best way to get jobs
I,
anywhere,
I
everywhere
would
in the
say that.
world.
I would say that too. Yeah,
Somehow,
same thing in the
like
States.
applications are actually, I would say today, I would say that I think they call it inbound marketing. You know, if you present yourself out there,
Hmm.
uh, and your customers, clients, employers, or whoever, they come to you and make offers, that is the best feeling in the world. That's the best way to get things if you're
Yeah,
able to do that. But when you're starting out at the very beginning of your career, that will never be a thing. And
yeah. No,
the
you're
next
absolutely
best thing is
correct.
personal connections.
Yeah. I had the same experience. Like I was applying a lot when I was in undergrad, and then so I didn't do any pause between undergrad and grad school. So I went straight from undergrad into the master, my first master's
Ah.
degree, and that's because of that class that I took with Amy, where I started going to her research lab and got
Hmm.
involved with the research project. And then I was doing good work, and she offered me to go to grad school and work at her lab because there was a
Oh,
grant
nice.
that was
Hmm.
funded. So I was like, yeah, sure, I get to think and design and get paid for that. Even though I was being paid pennies, that felt that felt amazing. And then I got a fellowship from the National Science Foundation, NSF fellowship, which paid for my
Mm,
2 years of my master's. So
cool.
did you pause between grad school? Did you go into work between undergrad and grad school?
I did go into work, but it was really great that you brought up like grants and
Yeah,
scholarships and things, by the way, because that's definitely something we should uh, tell people about when we're
yeah,
talking about the design PhD. That is a major aspect of it, and
of
it's
course, yeah.
for certain people, for certain situations, it's an amazing opportunity.
Sorry to
Uh,
pause right here. Can you hear any background noise on my end?
a little like reverb, I hear, but
Okay,
it's, I
but
think,
do you hear like machinery or anything like that? Because there is like construction outside my window, and
not
I
when
don't
you're
know.
not talking. I think when you're not talking, there's like a noise gate or noise reduction thing. But when you're
Okay,
talking on top of it, I can hear it a little bit.
all right.
I'm gonna try some. Can you talk now?
Testing.
And now it has cleaned up a bit because I turned off like the original
Okay,
sound thing.
all right.
But I think it'll
I'll
work.
find
It'll
that
be
out when
fine.
I open the audio file. Hopefully, it's
I
usable.
have a I have a friend who's an audio engineer. He's really good.
Yeah,
I recorded a podcast a while ago. It was like completely fucked up
yeah,
from the noise because we use wireless
mm,
earbuds. Never
yeah.
do that, by the way, when you're doing a podcast. Absolutely no wireless headphones, no
Okay,
wireless microphones, nothing wireless, basically.
nothing wireless. Yeah,
Yeah. And I had like incredible noise on the
yeah.
thing, and like anything above like 8,000 hertz or something, it was gone.
Oh wow.
It doesn't exist because the
Yeah,
headphone, like for the wireless signal, it just
yeah.
compresses it out, it cuts it out. Um, but my friend saved it basically. He
Oh, that's
made it a
great.
really nice sounding piece
All
of
right, I might
recording.
hit you up for for that front connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we
Yeah.
were talking about grants. Yeah,
Yeah, we should get back to that.
yeah.
But you know, I did work a little for a little bit. I think it was like close to a year, but not a full year after I graduated from university.
Hmm.
Before I went into the master's. I mean, the funny thing is like human-computer interaction, interaction design. These are sort of the main activity areas that I've been doing my work in the last like 10 years or so.
Yeah,
I was not aware that these things existed until the day that I actually started doing it
yeah.
as a job. They
Me
did
too.
not exist at my university at the time. I that like there wasn't even a course as far as I could tell, or I wasn't aware of it somehow. I just missed out on it because we didn't really have a design faculty at the time. We
Hmm.
did have computer science, but I don't know if they were offering anything like design connected. And then I graduated and I started working for a while. And at some point I was bored, you know, like I had
Yeah.
like a job in e-commerce. And I have this creative urge, you know, at any
Hmm.
job where I'm not like sort of doing programming or graphics or something like that. It's kind of I discovered through these years that's what I enjoy doing. Anyway, I started looking at different things I could do, like what jobs are out there. Can I make a living maybe like as a freelance designer and developer? And I did try it out for a while, but that goes back to the parents thing that you were talking about. My
Yeah.
parents didn't like the fact that I was a freelancer. They thought I
Yeah,
should be
it's not
doing like something
sustainable.
more respectable or whatever. Yeah, even though my dad was a freelancer, but he was like a more senior kind of consultant. Anyhow, um, yeah, I was looking around, and the HCI program, it was called Design, Technology, and Society. So this was a new program at my university that was being
Mhm.
started by a
And
new
what time is
professor.
that? What year was that?
Oh, this is like 2011 or something.
Okay.
And he was just starting this thing, like completely creating this new graduate program, a new lab. It was called the Design Lab. And he
Wow.
was like really he was hired to make this happen, like bring design into my university. It's called Koç University in Turkey.
And where did
Um,
he study?
he is an architect by training.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So he comes
It
from
always
like
comes
fine
back to
arts
the
and
architects and the
architecture. Yeah.
psychologists when it comes
Yeah.
to HCI.
There were a lot of psychologists involved
Yeah.
also. There was more psychologists and architects and graphic designers and things
Mhm.
than computer scientists in this. It
Yeah.
was actually uh, under the school, it was under the Graduate School of Social Sciences that this
Yeah.
was started.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it makes sense. Like even like our big conference, Kai, it started out as human factors by psychologists in like
yeah,
1983.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. And then computers, and that was like the time when personal computers with the Apple and the Apple II and everything. That's when they started coming into people's
yeah,
lives. And as you know, and in the
yeah.
90s and things like that, that's when we had more computers. And I think by now it was like what 40, 30 years after.
Hmm.
Now that computers are basically everywhere, we're finally sort of like, oh, computer science and humanity should really talk to each other. Um, yeah, so back to your to your department anyway.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of become like a basic fact of life, it's a part of the basic material of life, all these computers and everything. You could make the argument that actually, doing computer specific, sociology or whatever, like these kinds of HCI research
Yeah.
things is not as interesting anymore because you might as well just go and do sociology and
Yeah.
just take up computers as your subject matter. That's like a totally normal thing to do these days
Yeah.
because it's everywhere. But anyhow, so that story was like, I mean, we basically created the first HCI department and the first design lab in Turkey,
Wow.
as far as I'm aware. Like I was on the first team as a grad student, but the way that it worked at that place, at that university, at that department, at that lab was more like a job. It was a
Hmm.
research job, basically. I was expected to publish even as a master's student.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of engineering and I did a lot of like human-centered research, experiments, user studies, kinds of things. Um, and I published a couple of papers, so it was like a mini PhD in a way.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
same thing that I did with my master's. I also like I went into the PhD program with I think like 7 papers. I wasn't like the first author on them,
oh
but
wow.
I was a co-author. Yeah, and
Wow, okay, that is impressive. That's a lot of papers.
yeah, and that really helped me, get into the only PhD program that I got into. I applied to like 5 different ones, and I only got into one
Mhm.
at the University of Washington. But my advisor, Jake Bobrock, he recognized, that I have those skills that I can
Mm.
actually, participate and publish a paper, which is not really a necessity or a requirement, but definitely when you're like looking into getting a PhD, it definitely gives you a leg up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were hiring people recently. Like we had a grant, and people were applying for PhD positions, and the people who have done the work before, like there are certain things that you're expected to do when you're a PhD,
Yeah.
and we'll get into them in a moment. But the people who have done those things, like scientific publishing or certain kinds of engineering, certain kinds of design research, they definitely pull ahead. If you have a document, if you have an artifact
Yeah.
of your previous work that you can show, and I can look at that and I can see that, okay, this guy knows how to do this job that
Hmm.
I also need to be done. So might
Exactly.
as well hire this guy to do it, you know?
Yeah, that's how I got my job in the and got the offer to do my master's. Is that I went to Dr. Hurst, and I was like, "Hey, I made a thing." At the time,
Yeah.
I was working as a medical interpreter at Johns Hopkins, and I basically saw a problem. I was being called into. I was like an on-call interpreter, and I was being called
Wow.
whenever.
So like to a different language than English.
Yeah, Arabic and English.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I was being called whenever doctors were doing their rounds to ask the same questions of like, do you have any pain? How severe that pain, whatever. And it's only like for 5 minutes. And I got to charge the entire hour, which was great for me. But basically I was like leaving school, driving like half an hour to get to where I need to go, parking, paying for parking, and then have to validate my parking later. And for a like an undergrad student, that's just like
Oh, wow.
it's a lot.
This is when, what year is this? Like 2013?
Yeah, 2012, 2013.
Yeah, this is before Zoom was invented.
Yeah, exactly. And also like
Before Skype even maybe.
internet connection is not a thing. And also you're dealing with medical situations, so there is HIPAA compliance. You
Hmm.
can't really use any software, so it has to be
Oh
secure
yeah.
connection.
Okay.
Anyway, so in-person interpretation was a thing, so I like that was how I taught myself how to code and write HTML. I made like a little web app that was mobile optimized for like iPhones and stuff, where I had these previously written scenarios of like what questions or what statements you need to make, and you
Wow.
select yourself whether it was called interpreter, like an instant interpreter. And I had like an
Wow.
entire branding and everything. And you select, are you a caregiver? Are you like an admin person? You're checking somebody in, or are you the patient? And if you are the patient, then it said that in Arabic, in your own language, to know where to start. And I was doing all of that
Wow.
intuitively. Like I just like thought about it and designed it because of like I wanted to solve this problem. And I didn't know
So
like
you're just basically replacing yourself with software.
exactly. Yeah.
That is a very smart thing to do, man.
Nobody used it. Not a single person used it. I like it was a piece of software that had zero users beside myself. But I basically took it to Dr. Hurst, and I was like, "Hey, I made this thing, and
Wow.
basically I don't know what to do next." And she was like, "Come work for me." And then
Hmm.
that's how I started like my journey to go into grad school.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. One of the first projects that I did was, I think it had like 5 or 10 users. I made it like it was like a custom built, um, it was a business application. It was for a marble quarry. You know, we were talking
Uh-huh.
about the marble that Mark Newson was getting. It was not that one. This was in
Yeah.
Turkey. But they took these stones out of the mountain and they needed to like categorize these slabs into different brands and different qualities and things. And there was like 5 or 10 like high level people at the company, like these managers and engineers who
Yeah.
actually made this decision. So they had to get on a car and drive to the quarry every day to like inspect the stones and make the decision of like what category and what brand is going to what's going to be the price and things like that.
Yeah.
And then they try to use their like emailing pictures back and forth between them. And like one of the users, by the way, at least one of the users is a quarry worker.
Hmm.
So you have like 10 users, so like 9 are managers, and one of them is a guy who works at a quarry wearing a hard hat. So the same piece of software was supposed to let them accomplish this thing without using email
Yeah.
because that was getting very, very messy.
Yeah.
And they had like they could vote on the stones, and like one guy came in and made the decision and everything. That was one of the first projects that I did. They were like at the end of it, they were begging me to like keep doing the project, but I just couldn't. I had to do other projects, so I had
Yeah.
to find them another developer, and then I had to find them another developer. Like they loved it.
Wow. You see, it's like
That
not
was
every project has to be, the next Facebook or anything like that. Sometimes
yeah,
you
yeah.
just need to, make a piece of technology to help people accomplish something
Yeah,
faster
man.
or more
And
efficient
they
or
did
just
pay, by
yeah?
the way. Like I wasn't doing this for fun. Like I bought
Oh
a new
wow.
laptop basically. They actually bought me the laptop because they, I think, expensed it on the company or something. But that was my
You-
payment, like
Oh,
brand new
you
MacBook
got paid.
Pro. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. But this was before like I learned about, user-centered design and
Hmm.
everything. This was
Yeah.
before that. Um, I realized afterwards that what I was doing at that time was very much user-centered design because I was
Yep.
talking to them all the time. The son of the guy who owned the quarry obviously was my friend, so we sat down together for like hours and did the interface together. And I mean, he wasn't like coding or anything; it was just
Yeah.
telling me what to do, and
It's
I was like, okay,
co-designing.
let's do it like this.
Yeah.
Super fast, rapid iteration. It was so much fun.
Yeah. And how did you feel when you like started looking back at it after you were introduced to like human-centered design and design thinking process?
I tried to write a paper on it,
Uh-huh.
but that actually never happened. I don't know why. I could have done it at the time.
Yeah.
Today it probably doesn't. I don't even remember a lot of the things, but I think
Yeah.
also I didn't like document it properly at the time. So
Yeah.
when I studied the process in grad school, I think um, what the skill that I gained mainly was rather than doing it because I kind of intuitively did it already. The skill that I gained was being able to like talk about it. And
Hmm.
that was one of the things that I actually struggled with when I was freelancing. So I was doing these projects for people, for a couple of like heavy industry companies, legal offices. I was doing a lot of websites, um, different kinds of digital artifacts for different kinds of businesses. But I couldn't do like any kind of marketing. I couldn't articulate what it is
Yeah.
that I'm doing. I couldn't describe my process. I couldn't even put together forms or checklists or flowcharts or whatever that I could use myself
Uh-huh.
from client to client. I didn't have that ability at the time. And when I went to grad school and learned about like human-centered design and everything, that gives you like a recipe that you can follow. And you
Yeah.
can put that on your website and you can say, hey, I'm doing human-centered software development.
Yep.
And then people kind of know what you're doing. And you
Not a lot
can,
of people, but some people.
yeah, I mean, like you sort of expand your, we were saying that inbound is a great way to get
Yeah.
professional opportunities. If you have a website with like case studies or
Hmm.
whatever, that's a
Absolutely.
great way to find customers. Otherwise, you will only be working for your friend's dad, and like you have so many friends.
Yeah.
It's you
Yeah.
can't work for your friend's parents all your life. It's a
No.
great way to
Yeah.
get started, but like, uh,
To just get some
y-
experience.
yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get into we talked a little bit about how you got into the PhD program. But we said we were gonna touch on grants and funding and
Yeah,
things like that because that's a huge thing. Because
yeah.
if for anybody listening, like, do not pay to go to grad school. Like
Yeah, it's
don't
supposed
pay
to be a
for it out of
job.
pocket.
I mean, this is because, and I put this in the notes too. Like, this is how
Yeah.
I would define even like a PhD. And I mean, there's probably other kinds of PhDs that don't fit this definition, but for me,
Hmm.
the way that I experienced it, it was basically an entry level job where you make science. Like, it's
Yep.
the most junior job that you can have as a scientist.
Yep.
It is a job. You're doing science. You're expected to produce science,
Yeah.
or research in like, because there are fields that don't like to call themselves science, but you're
Hmm.
supposed to do like
Creating knowledge,
scholarly research. Yeah, and
contributing new
that's
knowledge. Yes.
that's the entry level job. You start as an intern or a junior designer if you want to get into a design career. If you want to get into an academic scientific career, you
Yeah.
start as a PhD student. That's the
Yeah.
path.
And it's a like a depending on how long it takes you, like a 5 6 years apprenticeship where you're
Yeah,
really like honing those skills. And at the end of it, and that's the cool thing, is that you have all this breadth of skills that you've developed by being the most junior scientist working on a project. But at the end of it, after many projects, you really start carving out your niche where you become essentially the world's leading expert on this one particular thing,
yeah,
because
like
that would
very
be
small,
your
narrow
thing.
thing.
It's very
Yeah.
small, it's very narrow, but you're pushing everybody's understanding forward. You're
Yeah.
contributing something that nobody but you has thought about in
Yeah.
this specific way. So, which is
Yeah.
something like really, really neat. And, it gives a lot of satisfaction on a lot
Mm.
of different levels. So, that's why like a lot of people still do PhDs, because like the hours are insane. The pay is
Yeah.
not great, but
The hours don't have to be insane, by the way. That changes from
that's true.
country to country, place to place,
Yeah,
professor to professor,
that is
or
very
person
true.
to person even.
But there is like this entire narrative. There is
Yeah.
the cultural aspect of academia of like, oh,
Mm.
even though it's being combated a lot right now, that your
Yeah.
your worth doesn't have to be tied to how many hours you spend in the lab. And
Mm.
again, a lot of faculty that are amazing, especially a lot of faculty I worked with, and very understanding, but that still exists, and like you said, from country to country, field to field, where
Yeah.
where you're expected to spend in 80-hour weeks or something like
As
that.
as a general principle, I'm kind of averse to systems, jobs, people, organizations, whatever, which measure
Oh
your
yeah,
contribution or your worth by your input. I think it's at least for me, I would like to be measured by my output.
absolutely.
uh, and that means I'm expected to produce some kind, like that's how I like to work. I think
Mhm.
about the output, and like whatever is necessary to create that, I will create it.
Yeah,
But if I manage to produce that output in like uh 1 hour, then I'm not going to waste like the next 7 hours of the day trying to look busy or something. That's
exactly.
kind of a
Yeah, which brings me.
measuring people by output, I think, is a better
Mhm.
way than the input.
Yeah, which brings me to a little bit of a tangent, especially because we're talking about design and creative work and things like that. Is that, don't if you're, especially like as a freelancer or something like that, don't
Mm.
don't charge by the hour. Like, that's not
Oh
fair
yeah,
to
man.
anybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like,
I know.
look up the future and Christo and all that work that they've put
Yeah.
up on YouTube and every social
Yeah.
media about like value-based pricing, because
There's a book about it written by a guy called Blair Enns.
Blair Enns, yeah,
His
he
the book
has
is
the Two Bobs podcast, I think.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, the book
um,
is called The Win Without Pitching
Win
Manifesto.
with
It's so
Pitching
good.
Manifesto. Yeah, it is a really
Yeah.
good book. But yeah, so like, especially as you're developing your craft and you're becoming better and better at it,
Mm.
one thing that takes you an hour, but you shouldn't
Yeah.
charge, for just 1 hour. Like, you should charge for how much this is worth to
Like should you
whoever you're
like
giving it. So
I mean,
yeah,
it makes
output.
sense. Like, are you going to charge more for being slower?
Exactly.
Is that if I do the same thing in like 1 hour versus 5 hours, shouldn't I be charging more even?
Yeah.
But I,
Uh,
I would also say that these conventions actually vary a lot between countries. Like a lot of these
mhm.
resources that I also enjoy, like Blair Enns or
Yeah.
Christo and the future on the topics of like design, business or whatever,
Yeah.
they are actually very much focusing on more like an American marketer culture. In
Absolutely.
Sweden, for example, it's very, very normal, even like standard, to measure work and salary and everything by hours, and to make
Oh,
those
really?
contracts and everything by hours. Yeah, yeah, it's a system that everybody understands, and it's like really hard to sort of battle that. Like at the end of the day, you and your client or employer can come to an agreement where it's 100% based on results,
Hmm.
but usually the contract and the accounting of it will be somehow done in hours. So
Oh,
that there's also that dimension of it. It's sort of like a business standard in terms of the legal and accounting system
I see. So have
and
you have
labor
you done any
laws.
work where it was like value-based pricing, but you had to write up the contract, or the invoice by like putting in a number
By
of
hours?
hours?
Yes, yes, I'm doing it right now actually. In a number of cases.
Yeah.
In many cases, like the somehow the hours always creeps into the contract. And it's
Yeah.
it's just the whole, it's the accounting system and the legal system and the labor laws and everything of the country.
That's fascinating. It's good to know
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
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 But it's a very like egalitarian, very kind of fair, I guess, system
Hmm.
compared to a lot of other places.
Yeah.
Um, So it's I would say it's acceptable. You find ways like like what exactly is your hour worth. That's
Yeah.
always something that you can decide on
Hmm.
between
Yeah.
between yourself and the other party.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't really
Some additional
negotiate that
math.
in a PhD.
Yeah, yeah. That's when it's a grant. That's usually not possible.
Exactly. And
But there
uh,
are different ways. Like we can do another episode on it, like being creative with grants, because I've been in certain situations
yeah.
where, uh, well, the rate was not negotiated, but uh, because you can definitely like you can participate as an employee, you can be a
Hmm.
PhD student, right? But
Yeah.
that is not the only way to get involved in scientific research projects and contribute to science.
Yeah. We
I'm
should
doing it
definitely
as a
do an episode
consultant
on
too.
that.
So we can talk about how that happens actually at some other point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We are actually getting onto the hour mark. I was hoping that
yeah.
we would do a short episode for like 30 minutes, but once we got talking,
Oh
do
yeah.
you so we said we were going to talk about like PhDs, and we ended up talking
Yes.
mostly about our journey and how to get
Yeah.
into a PhD. So
Yeah.
I want to close out by saying uh you as far as getting a PhD,
Mm.
it's a very personal decision. And
Yeah.
I don't think that you need a PhD unless you want to be
Mm.
like a tenure track professor or work in a field and a job that requires a PhD. And
Mm.
those are highly specific, like, I don't know, being a rocket fuel scientist or something like that. You probably don't need a PhD. So it's you gotta when you're making that decision for
Mm.
yourself, like I said, it's very personal. You have to think about more than what can you do with a PhD, like because you're going to be
Mm.
spending a lot of time, you're going to spend a lot of effort, and you're going to be making a relationship that lasts for a bunch of years with a person who's going to be your advisor and then your committee and all of those things. So
Yeah.
what like those are things that I wish somebody had told me before I did my PhD, just to keep it
Mm.
in mind. Not because I would do things differently or anything like that. I'm not at all, but like as I in my thought process as I'm approaching this period of life,
Mm.
is that it is more than, oh, I need a PhD because I want to get a multi-$100 $100,000 job or something like that. Like that's not, or because I want to be a professor. It's like, well, why do you want to be a professor? Like,
Mm.
try to think about your why before
I
before
think
you
those
embark on the commitment.
possibilities are all things that we could do like future episodes on maybe.
Oh yeah.
Those are because those options are what you're basically creating. Like, it is possible for certain kinds of PhDs to go on to make like a couple of 100,000 a year jobs or
Mm.
whatever as scientists
Yeah.
at in certain kinds of industries that does exist. But maybe we can leave those for a later episode. There
Yeah.
was something that you said at some point, and it's really funny now that we kind of sat down here
Yeah.
aiming to talk about something which was like, what even is a PhD, which involves
Hmm.
like human computer interaction and design. And then we kind of ended up talking about another thing, and that kind of was very yeah, incidentally, I wanted to touch on something when you were talking about how you should become like the expert on like something narrow, something very specific, but you're like the world's leading expert, when you
Yeah.
do your PhD. I want to say that, if anyone in our audience, like if you're doing a PhD right now or starting one or whatever, and you haven't found that thing, don't worry, man. Like
Oh yeah.
I have found it in my final years. Like I was writing my thesis as I decided what it was going to be about. Like what is the theme? What am I saying? What is like my actual what is like the content of my am I just like speaking nonsense or like
Yeah.
actually saying something? What is it that I want to tell the world by writing this like thesis or book or whatever? Those things I figured out in the final months or something. So
Yeah.
that is something that it goes iteratively, especially in creative fields like design. So in chemistry, medicine, or whatever, maybe there's less room for that kind of thing, and you have to have your
Hmm.
hypotheses set from the start and everything.
Yeah.
But a design PhD is extremely flexible,
Yep.
and it's a really fun thing to do for that reason, among others.
Yeah, absolutely, very well said. Because like you said, for other fields, where we're dealing with like physical things like chemistry or physics or something, like a hydrogen atom is a hydrogen atom. But with design, when we're dealing with people and human behavior and subjective things, it varies a lot. So like I wouldn't,
Yeah,
yeah, like there is a lot of stress about having your idea and what you want to contribute and things like that. But you find that along the journey. Just how we
yeah,
we completely sort of derailed what we set
yeah.
on to talk about today, and
And
we'll
like you are
definitely.
probably gonna do, you can change the title and change the abstract or whatever of your
Uh-huh.
work and
Yeah,
still have a very legitimate and valuable piece of work that's out there.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it is all part of the beautiful scientific process.
Yeah, because you set out to do something sometimes and then you realize you've done something else, but then, you don't want to instead of throwing that away,
Yeah.
you can change the focus of the conversation to sort of bring out the things that you actually have done.
Mhm.
Like maybe what should we call this episode then? So what is the name of this episode going to be now?
um I
The
think we should call it
journey
something like Origins, Journey
to oh
Origins
yeah.
Part One. Yeah.
To the mountain and back.
Yeah.
What was the the
Yeah.
Hobbit thing?
All right.
There and back
Anything you want to
again.
say
Yeah.
in closing?
Yeah, I just did. That was my closing statement.
Cool. Good closing statement. All right, man.
No, actually, yeah, this is I just remembered it. Sorry.
Yeah,
Um, I do make a podcast, another one, not this one,
yeah.
and also a YouTube channel and everything. And it's actually designed to be a really great entry point into the world of advanced study and sort of research and practice of design and computer science and technology and the intersections of those things. It's called Design Discipline,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it is a great entry point, but that's kind of the aspiration. That's what I'm trying to make it into. So we have articles and videos and everything, which is supposed to be a little more. So this podcast, for example, is evolving to be a more general thing, kind
Yep.
of a way of like getting people into this world. And if you're already into this world, or if you're putting like serious hours into exploring it, I think what I'm trying to do over there is to be the starting point for that.
Yeah, it's as the name implies, it's very disciplined. The design discipline, it's very you're putting a lot of work in it, and the production value is really worth it.
Um,
It's properly
I'm
designed. I highly recommend
Thank
people
you,
go
thank
go
you.
check it out. For this
The,
channel, I'm just starting with conversations, something very laid back, for people to listen to
I
while
love it,
while
man.
doing the dishes or driving or something like that.
It's
So
so good. We
yeah.
need that. But the funny story is the reason I named it design discipline is that I actually personally have very, very little discipline. So I thought if I call my project design discipline, then I will sort of force myself into being more disciplined in some ways.
I think it's actually working. You're putting out very great content. So
Thank you.
until next time, thank you so much. And we'll continue this conversation and hopefully get back to the point about how to get into a design PhD and what does it mean to get a design PhD in the next episode.